Hello and welcome once again to my channel. My name is Evans. I am a software engineer. Today I will be teaching you core Python fundamentals by building a word guessing game. So on my channel I have various playlists. As you can see, there is a playlist for core Python programming, Git and GitHub tutorial, utility lessons, Django and React, and Python and Django as well. But today we're gonna be focusing on this playlist, which is called Python Programming, and I'll be teaching you how to build a word guessing application. This application is gonna be a CLI application, which is command line interface. A CLI application is a program that runs in a text-based environment. So you're not gonna be seeing any graphics, but just text-based, and it's good for beginners to learn how to build application using CLI. Now, some people, they learn programming generally, maybe they learn Python, Java, C#, or any of these languages, but at the end of their training, they are not able to, translate what they've learned into a functional application. And that's why I want to teach core Python programming by building, application. And we're gonna be building a series of, games, CLI games, which is really going to strengthen your knowledge and give you that confidence you need. Now, with this word game application, you will learn how to declare variables in Python. You will learn some of the data structures in Python. You will learn conditional statements such as if-else statements. You will learn control flow, loops, functions, and also a few libraries in Python. So without any further much ado, let's get started. Now, you need to download VS Code if you don't have VS Code already installed on your system. And then you simply go to File and click on New File, and then put the name of your file. So I've already created mine and I call it wordguess.py. So what we want to do is when the application runs, it's gonna randomly select a word from a list of predefined words that we've already defined, shuffle those words, and then ask the player to guess what the word is. So this is what I mean. We'll have a list of words such as, maybe let me just use name, Evans, John, Midas, and so on. Now we want to shuffle these words. So instead of Evans, we need, maybe it should shuffle it something like ANS, V, V is something like this. And then ask the user to guess this word. And then for this John as well, it can shuffle it. And for this John as well, it can shuffle it like this, maybe HNOJ, and then for Midas, it should also shuffle it. Now, when it shuffles this word, we want, this word to come up randomly. So I don't want the game to always start with Evans or John or Midas. So if you're playing it now, it can start with John. Maybe what is this word? The next time it's gonna ask you for Midas, and for Evans, until when all the words that we've defined are complete, then the game will end and tell you your score. So this is a very exciting game for beginners. No high level stuff such as Django and React today, but we're just gonna focus on core Python programming. So now the first thing you want to do is to import a library called random. So say import random. Now this random library is gonna be responsible, for randomly selecting the words and displaying it to the user to guess. So when you want to generate maybe a random number, random string, or anything random, you need to import this library called random. Now the next thing I want to do is to define a function. I can write this application without defining a function, but like I told you earlier, how to define function is one of the things you're gonna learn with this word guessing game. So now to define a function, you just need to say def, and then you give your function a name. So I'm gonna call mine word guess game. So this is the name of my function, and then you open parentheses and you close the parenthesis and then colon. Then you go to the next line. So this is how to define a function. Now the next thing you need to do is we need to define the word that we want the user to guess. So I'm gonna define them in a list, and list is one of the data structures in Python. So I'm gonna give it a variable name. I will say the words. You can call yours whatever you want. This is just a variable name. It can be anything. The words equals, open square bracket. This is how to define a list in Python. Let me zoom my screen. So you open square brackets and then you open a quote. I'll put the first word, Evans, put comma. The second word, I'm gonna say Midas, and the next one, I'm just gonna say Joanne. So these are the words that I want, the application to shuffle and ask the user to guess the word. So you can list more if you want. You can also list less if you want. So as we keep expanding this application, we're not gonna use list again, because using lists, we're gonna be limited. If I keep on typing more names or more words, it's gonna be very long. So we're gonna remove this and put it in a notepad, and then the words are just gonna be picked from the text editor, and then the application can, randomly ask the user to guess the word. So for now, we're just gonna leave it like this, and this is a list. The name of the list is the words, which is a variable name. So yeah, now the next thing we need to do, I told you when the application starts, we want these names to be randomly selected. So to ensure that the names are randomly selected, you say random.shuffle, and then open parentheses, you say the words. So this will randomly select words inside this list and then shuffle the words as well. So this will also ensure that whenever the application starts, a new word will be randomly selected, from this list. Now, before we continue, I want to get something, I want to get the length of this list. So to get the length of this list, I will declare a variable. I will say the length. Like I told you, this is just a variable name. You can call yours whatever you want. The length equals len, open parenthesis, the words. Now, the length equals len, the words. It will get the length of this list. Now, the length of this list is 1, 2, 3, 4. 4. So why I declare this is so at the end of the application, I will be able to say your score is maybe score over 4. We have 4. This number 4 is the length of this list. So if I add more words, maybe I add something like Jane, the length is gonna be 5. So your score will count the score. The application will count the score as you keep playing. If you fail more than 3 times, it's gonna score you 0 for that. If you guess any word, it's gonna give you 1. You get the second one, it gives you 2. So at the end of the application, you will see something like 2 over 5. We have 5 is the length of this list. and then this 5 is because the application will keep on asking you, guess this word, guess this word, guess this, until the list is exhausted. So when the list is exhausted, the application stops. So now I have gotten the length of this list, which is 5. So we're gonna use it later. Now another thing I want to do is to define the score. So I will call it a variable name. I will say score equals 0. So when the program starts, score will be 0. If you get any word correctly, it increments this by 1. So for now, score is 0. Now we need to define a loop that is gonna iterate over this list. Like I told you, the application will run through this list, and for the application to be able to run through this list, we need to loop through this list. So how do we do that? You say for, then a variable name. Your variable name can be anything. I can say for the list in the words, and then colon for the list in the words. So this is how to loop through this entire list. This is a variable, while the words is the name of this list. So when you iterate over this list, you need to convert it back to a list. So I'll just give it a variable name again. I'll say my list equals list, open parenthesis, and you say the list. So I'm looping over this list. It's called iteration, and then I'm converting this loop to a list. So now what it means is, when it runs through this list, it gets Evans, for example. The first one is Evans. I have converted this Evans to a list, so it's gonna be E V A N S. No longer a single word. So I need to convert this to a list, which I have already done. So the list has been converted into a series of lists so that I can manipulate each word. So let me explain from the beginning again. I defined a function called word guess game. I defined a variable called score. I said equals 0. This will count the number of answers that the player got correctly and increment it by 1 whenever they get any word correctly. Now I defined a list of names. Now I said random.shuffle the words, so that each time the application starts, it randomly selects one of these words and start with it. So you can start with Midas and then select Peter, Evans, Joanne, Jane. The next time you play, it can start with a new word. The next thing I did was to get the length of this list I defined. So I gave it a variable name called the length equals len, the words. So this len is a library that is gonna count the length of your list. So the length is gonna be 5, because this is the length of my list. Evans 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now I told you the reason why I declared it is so at the end of the application, it's gonna say your score over the length, because the application will run until these names are exhausted. Now, I said for the list in the words, this is a variable name, and I'm iterating over this list. So I'm looping over this list. It should run through this list. I say my list equals list. The list, this list that runs through this list. So at this point, when it's gets this, when it's looping through this list, it picks, for example, Midas, and then it will now convert it to a list. That's why I say list, this list. So if it gets Midas, for example, first, it converts it to a list called MIDAS, separate words. The reason is because I want to shuffle this Midas as well. So the next thing you want to do is you say random.shuffle my list. Copy this my list, or you can type it if you want. So what is going to happen is when this loop runs through this list, it gets Evans. At this point, line 10, it will convert Evans to a list, and Evans is going to be like this: E, V, A, N, and S. So single words, that's why I converted it to a list. Now I said random.shuffle my list. So Evans is not going to be, in this order anymore. This random.shuffle is going to change it to maybe something like SNE, V, A. So it will randomly shuffle it. The next time you play the game, it's not gonna be in this order, but it will still shuffle this Evans again. So that's why I converted it to a list, so that I can get it in singular, alphabets, and then I shuffle this list that I've converted it into. So yeah, this is the explanation. Now the next thing you want to do, after you've converted it to a list and you've shuffled it, we need to join back your list together. Now remember, at this point I said this is the list, it iterates over this list. So for example, it goes to the first one, and this is it wouldn't start with Evans all the time, or Midas, Joan, Peter, or Jane. It can start with any of these names, because here I said random.shuffle the word. So when this list iterates over whatever word it wants to start first, so if it starts with Midas, for example, then at this point I have converted it to a list. It's gonna be my MIDAS, and then at this point random.shuffle my list, it will shuffle it, which I already explained before, to maybe something like SMIDAS. So it converts it to a list like this, and then it shuffles it like this. So after it shuffles it, it will still be in the form of a list, separated. Now we need to join back this list that is separated. That's why we need to say, let me say your guess equals open quotes, then you say dot join my list. So this your guess will now join back these words that have been randomly shuffled. So it's gonna now be SMIDA. So we will now say guess the word. So yeah, this is how it works. So I'm gonna delete this now. Now at this point, I will declare another variable, and I'll call it count. I will say count equals to 0. Now the reason why I'm declaring this count is so I want the user to try and guess the word for a certain number of time. Maybe after 3 trials, it should just say, you've exhausted your attempts, and then tell you what the word is. So that's why I'm declaring count. So this count, whenever you make a mistake, it will add 1 to this. So it's gonna be 1. You make another mistake, it's gonna be 2. You make another mistake, it's gonna be 3. So when count is 3, the program should tell you that you've exhausted your attempts and then tell you what the word is. That's why I declared a variable and I say count equals 0. So the next thing I will say, while count is less than 3, colon. So this is a while loop that will allow you to impute, or guess the word until count is, so while count is less than 3, it will allow you guess the word. Once count is equal to 3, it will now tell you that you've exhausted your attempts and then give you the right word. So this is a while loop that will ensure that the user gets the word for a certain number of time. So in a real world application, for example, you've used your ATM, and sometimes when you try your PIN more than 10 times, it blocks your PIN, it blocks your card. This is how it is implemented using while loop. So while count is less than 3, I'm gonna declare a variable now. I will say, let me zoom this back. I will say while count equals to 3, I will say your guess equals input, open parenthesis, open a quote. I will say please, I will say guess the word. So this input will allow the user type something into the console. So if I don't define this input, the user is not going to be able to interact with the application. So this input allows user to input something on the console while displaying this message. So it will say guess the word, and then you will be able to type something. So guess the word, what are you guessing? So put a comma here, and then put curly brace, and then you type this, guess the word, your guess. It's gonna be this. So this your guess and this cannot be the same variable name, so I'll change this to the guess. These variable names, you can call yours whatever you want, so I'll say the guess equals input, guess the word, and then I'll say your guess. So this is how it's gonna be. When the application runs, it will tell you guess the word, and if it picks Joanne first, it's gonna be guess the word OANJ, something like this, because it has randomly shuffled it and also randomly selected it. So it's a guess the word, your guess. This is your guess here. So now, to make this work, you need to put it in an F formatted string. So I'm gonna put F here. Yeah, so this is it. So now you say if the guess, this is the guess that has been imputed, because this is a variable name, whatever you impute inside this prompt is gonna be assigned to this variable name called the guess. So if the guess equals to the list, why am I using the list? Remember, this list is what runs through these words. So I say for the list in the words, and so I'm saying if the guess, this guess is what you imputed, is equals to this list here. So if they are the same thing, it means you got the answer correctly. You say print, quote, you got the answer. So at this point, if you get the answer, what do we need to do? We need to say score, this score that we defined above. It says score plus equals to 1. This is how to increment the value of score. You can also say score is equals to score plus 1. So the value of score is 0, so score plus 1 is going to give you 1. But just leave it like this. Score plus equals to 1. And then you break the loop. You say break. So it will stop. It's not going to ask you to guess this particular word again. So it's going to go to the next word now. So else, so if you got the word, it should print you got the answer and then increment your score by 1 and then break. Else, it means if you don't get the word, if the words are not the same, you say print your answer is wrong. Please try again. So if your answer is wrong, what should happen? If it's right, we say score plus equals 1, we increment the value of score. But if it's wrong, we should increment the value of count so that it will know that you've attempted it for a certain number of times. So I'm gonna say count plus equals 1. Now, so if you get it, it should break and go to the next question. Otherwise, it should say your answer is wrong. Now, how do we know, how do we determine when the user has attempted 3 counts? You need to bring down your cursor and you say if count is equals to 3, colon, say print, you have exhausted your attempts. So print will display a message. Now you have exhausted your attempts, and then we need to tell the user what the correct word is. The word is this the list. So you copy the list, you come here, open curly brace, paste the list, and like I told you before, you need to put it in an F formatted string, so you put F here. Now then you press enter. So this application will run until when it has exhausted these names or these words inside this list. That is when it's gonna end. So that is taken care of with this for loop. So for the list in the words, it runs through it, and when it exhausts this list, it ends. And then in here we say while count is less than 3. It means the user will attempt guessing the word until count is up to 3, and that's why we said here if count equals to 3, then print F, you have exhausted your attempts. So now you need to bring back your cursor to this point. So whenever the program, when it has exhausted the words, you need to tell the user their score. So I'm gonna say print in quotes just give a message, the game is over, and your score is. So how do we get the score? You say result score, this variable name score, put it inside a curly brace, score over the length. Remember, the length is the length of this list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So score over the length. Put the length also in curly braces, and then you add an F formatted string. Yeah, so this is it. Now this application will not run until we define another function. So we're gonna say come to the beginning, and then you say if underscore underscore 2 name underscore underscore equals to equals to double quotes underscore underscore main underscore underscore, and then colon. Then you type in the name of this function, word guess game. So this ensures that the game will only run when the file is executed directly and not when it is imported. Because this function that we define, you can actually import it in another application, but that's not what we are doing. We want to ensure that when this file is executed, it runs. So that's why you need to declare this. So now we've written our word guess application, and then we're gonna try it now. Now before we try it, I'm gonna do something. So here I said input guess the word. I need to just make it more readable, just put a colon. It's not mandatory, but just to make our application more clear, and then put a space so that after it says, for example, it says guess the word, there will be a space before you can type. Without this space, this cursor is gonna be together with guess the word, and then you're just gonna type in your word, which doesn't make sense. But with this space now, guess the word, there will be a space when you type. There's a space between the word and what you've typed. So it's gonna be like this: guess the word, colon, space, and then you can type. That's why I gave a space. Now another thing you should know is Python is case sensitive. So this is Evans. Start with capital E. Midas, the same thing. However, if the user type Evans, even if the user got this word correctly, it will still say you failed the word, because this is capital and this is small letter. The same thing applies to Joanne. Maybe while populating this list, you can always make mistakes, and maybe Peter, you do it like this, Petr, or maybe you do Midas like this, you type it like this. So we want to ensure that whether you type it in small letter or capital letter, the application will accept your input and tell you that it's correct if you got the word correctly, irrespective of the case you use. So what you need to do is you need to say if the guess, this is the guess, this is where you are imputing it. If the guess dot lower, so you convert what the user has imputed into lower alphabet. You put this, and then you say equals the list dot lower as well. So this dot lower converts all this to lowercase. So Midas is now gonna be Midas. So irrespective of the fact that D, A, and S is capital, the lower method will convert them to small letters all through. And then when you type in your word as well, maybe you type it like Midas, it converts everything to Midas. This way, all your inputs have been converted into lower characters, and the words inside this list have also been converted into lower characters. You can also use to upper if you want. So you can say dot lower or upper, upper. it's still gonna work. It's still gonna convert everything to upper. If it changes to upper, also changes to upper, but I'm just gonna leave it as dot lower. So yeah, this is it. Now before I run this application, just go to file and click on save all, and then you can click this button here, run Python file. Click on it. Okay, there is a mistake. Now everything looks alright, so just run it again. Click on this. After this guess your word, just give a space, so this your word and this colon, they are not together, and then you save your file, save all, and then you click on this. So yeah, this is my command line interface. So now you see it says guess the word EREPT, and so I'll just put something that is wrong. This, I think this is for Peter. He's trying to guess this word. It randomly selected Peter first, so I'm gonna say something else. I'll say it's John. Press enter. So it says your answer is wrong, please try again. I'll say me. Your answer is wrong, please try again. I'll say Jack. So you see it says your answer is wrong, please try again, but you have exhausted your attempts. The word is Peter. Now it goes to the next one and it says guess the word this. So this time around I'm gonna get it correctly. I'm gonna say Evans. So you see it says you got the answer. Now the next one is guess the word. This is for Midas, so I'm gonna type it correctly. Press enter. You got the answer. Guess the word. I'm gonna type something else. I'm gonna say it's Jane. Your answer is wrong, please try again. Jane. Your answer is wrong, so this time around I'm gonna get it. I'll say Joanne. Press enter. You got the answer, and then it's asking me for this. I'll say Jack. I'll just fill it, Jack. So when I attempted it 3 times, it says you have exhausted your attempts. The word is Jane, but the program is over because it has finished looping through this list. So it says the game is over and your score is 3/5. So it's a very simple application, but it teaches you a lot. Now before I stop this video, I'm gonna explain this code one last time. First thing I did was to import this random class, which enables this word to be selected randomly. Remember, when we ran this application, it started with Peter, but now I'm gonna run it again and see the word it's gonna start with. So I'll click on this one Python file. Let me kill this, run it again. The first time it was Peter. Let's see if it's gonna select a different word. So you see, guess the word. This is for Jane. So this random class is there to randomly select words from this list of words we define. And here we say score equals 0 to count your score. Whenever you get an answer, it's gonna increment the value of score by 1. And here we define the list with these words, and then I shuffled the list, random.shuffle the words. So whenever this program starts, it's gonna maybe pick Midas first or Joanne or whatever word it wants to pick. The next thing I did was to define a variable. I call it the length, to get the length of this list. So the length is gonna be 5 because the length of this list is 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I declared a for loop to iterate over this list. So when the application runs, it moves through the entire list until the names are exhausted. That's why I say for the list in the words. So it goes 1, 2, over it. However, it's gonna randomly go over it because of this random.shuffle. So for the list in the words, and then I convert this the list to a list. This the list is I maybe it's better to use a different variable name so it don't confuse you, but this is a variable name, it can be anything. So I convert it into a list. That's why when we run this application now, at this point, if it selects Evans first, like I said before, it will convert it into a list, and Evans is going to be like this, separated, A-N-S. And the reason why we want it like this is so we can shuffle these words again. At this point, Evans is one word and it cannot be shuffled. But when you convert it into a list, it separates it into 5 different characters, and then you can now shuffle these characters. So after converting it into a list, we now say random.shuffle my list. This is the list that was converted. So it's gonna randomly shuffle this. So this Evans is gonna be maybe SNAV, E. Randomly shuffle it. So when it shuffles it, it is still in a form of a list, separated one after the other. And so we say your guess will define another variable name equals dot join my list. So it will now join this back to a single word, and it's gonna be like this, SNAVE. So a single word. And that's why when you run the application, let me run it again so you see. I'm gonna put this in comments so it doesn't give us an error. Just click on file, save all, and then you run it. So you see Jane has been shuffled, and then it's together. Instead of like this, something like this, is now together. Now, then the next thing, I declare a variable called count, and this count, we will increment it whenever you get an answer wrong. So we say while count is less than 3. So this is a while loop to make sure that it goes over the same word if the answer is wrong. So while count is less than 3, this is a variable name which you can call whatever you want. We say the guess equals input. Now I told you this input will allow the user type into the console and communicate with the application. Guess the word. This is gonna be printed. Your guess. Your guess is this list. This your guess equals dot join my list. So yeah, let me run it again so you see. So this is it. Guess the word. Is this print statements? Guess the word, and then because of this input, you can now type something. If this input wasn't there, you will not be able to type anything. Now, we now do some comparison. We say if the guess is what you've imputed, dot lower, convert it to lower, equals to the list dot lower. So it gets this word through this for loop, and then converts these words into lower, so that whether you type out in capital letters or you type in lowercase, it's gonna still accept it. So if your guess.lower is the same thing as the list.lower, then it should print you got the answer, and then it says score plus equals 1. Increment the value of this score and break. So it breaks and goes to the next question. But if you don't get the answer correctly, it says print your answer is wrong, try again, and increment the value of count by 1. So count can be whatever you want, which we define here. It can be any variable name. You can call it attempts or whatever you want. Then at this point it says if count is equal to 3, that means the user have tried 3 times. It should print you have exhausted your attempts, and then the word is the list. It gives you the correct word, and then at the end of the application, when this for loop has gone through the entire list, it will now say, it will now print and tell you, display this message: the game is over and your score is score. This score that we've been incrementing when you get it over the length. This length is this variable we defined which holds the length of this list. So yeah, this is it. You should practice this and then make sure you're not using AI to correct your mistakes, or you're not using AI to develop, because if you apply for jobs and you go for an interview, most times you won't have access to the internet. And also when you use AI to build stuff like this, it's gonna count against you, because the recruiters will definitely find out. And then you can't be a programmer if you can't build simple applications like this on your own without the use of AI and all that. So if you make mistake, just come back to my code, and then if you have any error in your application that you can't resolve, just put it on the comment section and I'll be there to help you. So on the next lectures in this tutorial series, we're gonna modify this application, expand it, and so you keep learning, and then when we finally done, we can start building another application. But for now, I think this is okay. And if you understand this, you learn how to define a function, you learn how to iterate over a list, you learn while loop, and if and else statement as well. So thank you very much, and subscribe to my channel and also like my videos. Thank you, and see you again in the coming days. Bye bye. And then ask the user to